Howdy friends, it's Will and it's time for another update on the great stem cell adventure of 2018. It is Monday, April the, I don't know, or May, I guess. I've lost track. I guess May the 15th, I think. And I really should have done this weekend, but the truth is I was just too tired. I didn't have the energy. And I kind of don't even feel like I do now, but I need to get it done. And that's just pretty typical of how a lot of my days go. Just soldiering through, even though I may not feel at my best. And what's going on right now is that this is the time of year where we are moving from not needing the heater at all to, or needing the heater at night to not needing the heater at all, and to actually running air conditioning all the time because it's like 89 degrees out today, and so it's pretty warm. It gets pretty warm in the house. So that's not too bad, I guess, as far as heat goes, but that that little change in the atmosphere wreaks havoc on my nervous system. And I'm not going to talk too much about that right now because I want to cover some other things, but it's a daily battle that I fight, trying to decide what to wear so that I'm comfortable, trying to figure out what the temperature is going to do at night while I'm asleep, how to dial in the thermostat. I'm lucky I've got a thermostat that I can dial in from my iPhone, which is great. But just those real slight temperature transitions cause me more trouble, really, than anything. And so, for the last few days, it's been all about being hot and having to run the air conditioner, and I'm trying to adjust. So, but anyway, enough of that. So in my last update, I talked a little bit about being in the hospital in Lubbock. And I was there for about a month, and then they moved me to Craig Hospital in Denver. And, if you're going to be in a hospital at all, and especially for any length of time, Craig is a good hospital to be in. They are very good at what they do, which is they specialize in spinal cord injury and traumatic brain injury, and mainly on rehab. That's what they focus on, trying to help people who have had those type injuries prepare themselves for reintegration back into life as normal as possible, and they're good at it. It was it was some effort to get in there, but it was well worth it. And I will always remember that they were, that it was a good place to be. But it was not all, rainbows and unicorns. And I could tell you a lot of stories about my time in the hospital there, much of which was spent alone, at least in terms of friends and family. I had a few friends who lived in Denver who would stop by occasionally. My family, of course, was all, some distance away, but made a few visits. And my significant other at the time, Carol, was there pretty much every weekend, and which was tough for her because she had been at a brand new job for exactly 9 days when I got hurt. And her life was turned upside down for the next 4 months, and longer than that, but obviously for those 4 months, because she had to work. She had to do her job. Otherwise, we weren't going to have insurance. And we were very fortunate that we had really good insurance coverage with her new job, because by the time I got out of the hospital, the bill would have been well over $1 million, easily. And as surgeries and things like that go, my case was relatively minor. I had a surgery on my neck right off the bat. I had a surgery on my wrist, which I broke right off the bat. And the only other surgery I had was when they put a vena cava filter in my circulation system, so that I wouldn't get any blood clots or anything. That's a pretty normal thing with with spinal cord injuries. So, you know, it could have been even worse monetarily, but we were fortunate in that respect. And a lot of people helped out with expenses. One of my good friends, a guy named Steve Fox, pretty much single-handedly got Carol back and forth between our new home in Indiana and the hospital in Denver. And we'll be forever grateful to those folks and everybody who has helped out along the way, including those of you who have gotten involved now. And there have been a few more people who have hit the GoFundMe campaign, and I definitely appreciate that. So I don't want to just go on, and I'm kind of tired and afraid I'm going to ramble. So I'm trying to think about what was most significant about my stay in the hospital. And there's a lot of things that I could pick out, but it was tough. I mean, it was a dark time. Oh, looks like the battery thing on my video camera is flashing at me that it's about to go dead. So I'm going to plug this in and either continue or let it charge up a bit and come back. Okay, there we go. Long enough. Luckily, my charging cord is long enough. So, anyway, I don't really know what to say was most significant about my stay in the hospital. But it was tough. I mean, they would come in and get me out of bed every morning, and you know, they had the kind of the way my days would go is they would first thing they would do is come in and they would drain my urine bag. I had no bladder or bowel function right off the bat, and so I had a catheter that was inside of me 24/7 that drained into a bag, and so they would come and they would drain that out. Then they would use this kind of a crane thing to lift me out of bed. Well, they'd dress me first, because at this point I could barely move anything, arm a little bit, leg a little bit, but nothing, you know, good enough to get myself dressed at all or get myself out of bed. So they would get me dressed, and then they would lift me out of bed with the crane thing, and they would put me in my wheelchair, and I would go off to eat breakfast. And then I would go to the first of my physical therapy appointments for the day, and I would have usually 2 or 3 of those every day. They also had classes about how to, you know, fly on an airliner when you use a wheelchair, or how to get a job when you're disabled. And quite frankly, I refused to go to those because I didn't plan on being in a wheelchair for the rest of my life. Didn't plan on being disabled for the rest of my life. And my refusal to cooperate with some of those efforts got me in a little bit of trouble, but I wasn't there to be flexible. I was there to get better, and you know, and I had told them that I didn't want to leave the hospital until I could walk out, and that was my ultimate goal. And there were a lot of ups and downs on the way. Maybe in the next video I'll talk about some of that, because there were a lot of those. There were days where it seemed like the victories were great. I remember the very first day that I managed to walk across the swimming pool by myself. I was in the swimming pool 2 or 3 times a week. I got as much pool time as possible, because I knew that was going to be really helpful for me. And I remember the day that I walked across the pool by myself for the first time. I was so excited and so happy that I said, "Fuck yes," and got in trouble for throwing F-bombs in the pool. Big trouble, in fact. They threatened to throw me out of the hospital. The irony was that part of the reason why I was so effusive was because they were experimenting with certain drugs, one of the side effects of which is euphoria. So, you know, in a way, it's almost their own fault, but I can't really blame that on them. I'm a foul-mouthed son of a bitch most time anyway. So, but little things like that are the kind of things that I'll always remember. But each one of my days was filled with work, physical therapy, occupational therapy, and I'd go to meals, and then I would end up back in my hospital room, around 3 or 4 in the afternoon, and I'd get some sleep, maybe take a nap, and then it would be time to poop. That was a big daily affair, where a nurse would come in, or a CNA, I guess. Actually, the nurses escaped most of the shitty duty, literally, and they would come in and put me on a special chair and dig the poop out of my ass. This is the thing that people don't understand about spinal cord injuries is how much of this stuff just strips away your humanity one day at a time, and a lot of people can't deal with it. I fortunately am pretty good at compartmentalizing, and I just didn't care. It was just part of it. It's just what had to be done. And once all of those things were finished up for the day, then it was dinner time, and basically lay around in my room in the evening and watch some TV until I fell asleep. I couldn't change the channel with my hands because they didn't work good enough, so I had a little tube that was attached to an electronic channel changer, and I would blow on it. That was kind of a puffer thing that are also common with like wheelchairs for folks who are paralyzed from the neck down. And that's how I would change the channel, and I would watch TV. I had to leave the TV on all night because if I didn't, I would wake up in a panic. I would have bad dreams, and the TV helped pull me out of those. And so if I was in my room, the TV was on. I had to have that distraction. And so, that's the way it went for about 3 months. Wake up alone in a hospital, paralyzed from the neck down, and try to get my shit together so that I could go and do the work I had to do that day and try to survive it. And I did, of course, not always gracefully. There were times, for sure. But one of the things that I was most grateful for is that there were quite a few folks there who were committed to dealing with patients as they were. And what I mean by that is, a lot of us were sad and grouchy and in a lot of pain, and it was disappointing that there were some nurses in particular who just couldn't seem to handle that. I had one in particular who I explained to her that every time there was a loud noise, like somebody dropping something or a door slamming, that I got an electrical shock in my entire body because of my nervous system being so screwed up, and because she would slam the door coming in and out of my room, and she just really did not care to hear any of that, and to the point where one day she came in and they had to give me some pills that needed to be ground up in my food or something. I don't remember what the deal was, but bottom line is she was using a mortar and pestle to grind up these pills, and it seemed like she was almost making extra noise just to make my day worse. And I went to the head of nursing and basically said, listen, I never want her in my room again, period, no compromise. And that happened a couple of times, and I guess I earned a little bit of a reputation. But if I had one thing to say to anybody who's ever in a hospital or going to be in a hospital for any length of time, it's be your own advocate, because they're not always going to be. They have lots of people to see, and I'm not advocating being ugly about it, but you do have to stand up for yourself, because in a lot of ways a hospital is a bureaucracy, especially with healthcare laws being what they are these days. I couldn't even have vitamin C in my room without violating one of the hospital rules. So there's a lot of things about being in a hospital that you just don't know until you've been in one for a while. And it was frustrating that sometimes the folks that were supposed to be there demonstrating the greatest amount of empathy just really didn't seem to have much. It was like they forgot which one of us was in the hospital for the bad reason, other than as a choice of employment. And those were tough days for me, but I got through those as well. So at any rate, I was really grateful for the people on the opposite end of the spectrum who basically just nothing fazed them. They basically were like, look, I know you're having a bad day. We'll get you through it. Let's just hang tough. Those were the folks that if I could give out some kind of a Nobel Healthcare Award to, I would. So anyway, I may talk more about the hospital thing in my next video, but I've been rattling on for 15 minutes now and I need to cut it off. At any rate, I appreciate everybody getting involved with this and making a personal connection with what I hope is going to be a really positive outcome. So I'm going to go take a nap now, I think. All right. Thanks for watching.